Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jim Porter, to Wayne LaPierre, to some of Iowa's finest. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the 2014 NRA Annual Meeting to the great state of Indiana. In case you don't know it, you've come to the heart of the heartland, the crossroads of America, motorsports capital of the world, home to the Indy 500 and the Brickyard, the amateur sports capital of the world, home court to Hoosier High School basketball and the NCAA, the Colts, and of course, the future NBA world champion Indiana Pacers. And just in case you like the outdoors, you've come to the right place as well. For hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, or trail riding, I got to tell you, Indiana's the place to be. Our park system was established nearly 100 years ago. It was a centennial gift citizens of Indiana gave to future generations. Our state parks consist of 32 total properties, 24 parks, 8 reservoirs, a total of 171,000 acres. We draw 16 million visitors every year, and our Indiana State Park Inn system ranks first in the nation in occupancy. And I'm proud to say that Indiana was one of the first state park systems in the country to allow concealed carry of handguns in our parks. Lots of shooting ranges in the DNR system, including 3 high-end ranges. From the dunes up north along Lake Michigan to the Hoosier National Forest to the south, our parks are a great place to hunt, to fish, to hike, to ride. We invite you to join us if you've got a few extra days during your visit to the Hoosier State, or come back real soon and enjoy the natural beauty that is the state of Indiana. So let me say on behalf of the good people of Indiana, including more than 100,000 NRA members who reside in this state, we're truly grateful that you chose the Hoosier State and proud to have so many freedom-loving Americans in our capital. My wife is especially grateful that you brought Tom Selleck to Indiana. Would you join me in welcoming the First Lady of the state of Indiana to this NRA annual meeting? Karen Pence is with us, everybody. You know, when I met her 30 years ago, she had a handgun and a motorcycle. It was love at first sight. You know, the truth is, Indiana's always a good decision, because Indiana is a state that works. Now, why do we unabashedly say that, unabashedly paper our downtown with posters telling everyone that? Well, because it's true. Here in Indiana, we have balanced budgets and the lowest unemployment rate in the Midwest. We have one of the fastest growing labor forces in the country, and our school kids improve their math and reading skills at the second fastest rate in the nation. We have the fastest growing school choice program in America, and soon we in Indiana will lead the nation by making career and vocational education a priority in every single high school in this state. And I say to you from my heart, Indiana is a state that worked, because in Indiana we don't just talk about freedom. We live it. We breathe it. And we keep freedom at the center of who we are, and it's what makes our state a success. And really, it's been that way from our earliest days. Indiana's been a place of rugged individualism, men and women who believe in freedom and had the strength to brave the often harsh elements of the Midwest to make a life for themselves. One of those forebears was the family of Abraham Lincoln. He was 9 years old in 1816 when his father moved his family to Spencer County, Indiana. Lincoln spent 14 of his formative years in southern Indiana. President Lincoln would later describe his home as a, quote, wild region with many bears and wild animals in the woods. It was here in southern Indiana that Abraham Lincoln was introduced to the power of books. It was here that he buried his mother at a very young age. And it was here that Lincoln learned the values that would guide his life and his service and lead our nation through the fiery trial of the Civil War. You know, we like to say here in the Hoosier State, Lincoln made Illinois, but Indiana made Lincoln. So for as long as we can remember, Hoosiers have made freedom the bedrock of our culture in this state. It's also the bedrock of our policies and our government. Here in Indiana, we've made a habit of not taking freedom for granted, and we work every day to preserve freedom in all of the policies of this state. We believe in freedom from debt. That's why, along with a balanced budget, the state of Indiana reports a $100 million surplus and nearly $2 billion in reserves. We're one of a handful of states that has a AAA bond rating from all the credit rating agencies in our nation. We're also a state that believes in freedom and free enterprise, especially the freedom to keep more of what you earn. Here in Indiana, we'll soon have the lowest taxes in the Midwest, and we have tax cuts scheduled every year until 2021. We've cut the income tax, we've cut the corporate tax to the second lowest in the country, and we ended death taxes in Indiana once and for all last year. We also believe in freedom when it comes to our schools. Hoosiers believe in the freedom to run our schools the Indiana way without unnecessary federal intrusion. Here in the Hoosier State, we believe education is a state and local function, and that decisions about curriculum, about standards, about textbooks should be made in the communities by the parents and families that are affected by them the most. And as freedom-loving people, we in Indiana cherish all of our freedoms in the Bill of Rights. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the freedom of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms. We stand on that freedom here in the Hoosier State. Just like all of you, people across our state are champions of liberty. You and tens of millions like you have defended limited government, personal responsibility, and liberty against the forces of expansive and paternalistic government. And nowhere is that ongoing struggle for freedom more visible than when it comes to the battle over the Second Amendment. Now, we all know in this room that firearms in the hands of law-abiding citizens don't threaten our families, they protect our families. Firearms in the hands of law-abiding citizens don't cause crime, they help in the fight against crime. Because of all of you, the preservation of our freedoms is on the march. Because of freedom-loving Americans like you, we're preserving our freedoms in this state and in this nation, and I commend you for your stand. Now, as I close, allow me to encourage each of you to consider one more thought as we stand for freedom in this nation. Let me encourage you to consider the importance of state-based reform and federalism in our effort to renew our land. Now, some of you know that I served 12 years in the Congress before I was elected governor of the state of Indiana. And I have to tell you, if I only had 12 years left to live, I'd want to live it as a member of Congress, because that was the longest 12 years of my life. Look, the truth is, while Indiana and many other Republican-led states are working, Washington, D.C. is not only broke, it's broken. The longer I serve as governor of this great state, the more convinced I am that the cure for what ails this country will come more from our nation's state capitals than it ever will from our nation's capital. Look, we must never relent in our effort to renew our national government, but let us with equal vigor redouble our efforts to advance freedom and American ideals in every state in the land. Despite what some may think in Washington, D.C., our state governments are not territorial outposts of the national government. The states are the wellspring of the American experiment. As Ronald Reagan said, it's important to remember that the states created the federal government. The federal government didn't create the states. It will not be enough for renewed majorities in Washington, D.C. to simply cut government spending. We, in this place and across this country, must demand that the next generation of leaders permanently reduce the size and scope of the federal government in Washington, D.C. by returning to the states and to the people those rights, those resources, and those responsibilities that are rightfully theirs. Defending freedom in our states, our schools, our homes, our businesses is never easy. And at times, it seems that our success doesn't match the scope of the energy and resources against which we labor. But maybe that's always been true. As Thomas Paine wrote, quote, "We have this consolation with us. At the heart of the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. Heaven knows how to put a proper price on its goods, and would it be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated?" So we are encouraged. Our defense of liberty is a defense of our homes, our families, our communities, and the rights that are their heritage. It's a defense of our children, born and unborn. So to every freedom-loving American in this place and all those card-carrying members of the NRA across this land, we say stay in the fight. Hold the banner of freedom high, just like we do here in Indiana. Reaffirm the practice of the principles of the American founding at every level, especially the states. And do not grow weary in doing good. For as the old book says, at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. In the proper time, your labors in freedom's vineyards will prevail. Because where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And that means freedom always wins. Thank you for the honor of addressing this great 2014 meeting of the NRA. God bless you all and welcome to the great state of Indiana.